Hey everyone, welcome back to Room 237, and I've got another review from my Criterion collection. And it's not a horror film, but it definitely has some dark themes and imagery. And this is one that I did not show during my collection video because, as I said in the collection video, there's a couple I was waiting to come in, and then I'll just show them whenever I can. And so the review for this is 1992's Man Bites Dog, which is a Belgian film. And this is a movie that I've heard about. I've also just heard that euphemism plenty of times. And yeah, this is the old Criterion collection. I've heard this in lists of most shocking, disturbing, extreme films, even in horror, but it's not really a horror film. It's actually more of like a very dark comedy. And the other one that I was waiting on to come in is the Blu-ray of Dr. Strangelove. Yeah, all I gotta say about that, Dr. Strangelove. Kubrick, awesome. Blu-ray was the same price as the DVD, so definitely. So, Man Bites Dog. It's a Belgian film. It does have subtitles. I don't mind subtitles. I know a lot of people that would already turn this off because A, it's got subtitles, B, it's black and white, C, it's found footage. All three of those do not bother me. I actually love black and white. And the closest thing I can compare this to would be the first half of Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. I know there's several reviews here on YouTube that have made that connection, because it is about a documentary crew following a serial killer in his day-to-day life, kind of showing how he does what he does. Of course, in Behind the Mask, it's more of this tongue-in-cheek slasher killer setting up his killing field. This is a guy who's already been established for years, and just kind of showing how he chooses his victims, what he does with them, how he disposes of them. And even this cover is kind of done for shock value, because I will say, spoiler alert, although we do have the death of a child in the film, it's not a baby with a pacifier. And actually, other covers I've seen, it's a pair of dentures, which I actually kind of like that cover better, just because, I don't know, it just seems more, grisly than shocking. But this was made by Remy Balveau, Andre Bonzel, and Benoit Poelvoorde, if I pronounce those correctly. I suck with foreign names. And actually, all three of those guys still had the same first names. Similar to Behind the Mask. Doesn't really show how these guys came to be with this killer, or why this killer wanted a documentary made of him. But it opens up with him, he's in the train, or this train. A woman walks by, he kind of squeezes out of the way, and when she walks by, he just garrots her with wire, drags her into his cabin, strangles her, and then he gives him a lesson on how to fill bodies and sheets full of ballast, like how to weigh a body down before you dispose of it, and different weight ratios for different body types and victims. And I think that sort of adds to the humor of this film, because it is played off as a very, very dark comedy. And I think sort of the educational value, if you want to call it that, does help serve kind of the comedy. It's a very dry, dark kind of humor. It does have its shock moments. It does have moments of sort of suspense and dread and sort of where's this movie gonna go. Other than just knowing what this movie was about and knowing about it for years, I purposefully stayed away from any kind of knowledge about it so that I could go into it as blind as possible. Because this is the kind of movie where you don't want to know where it's going. And I was surprised by the ending because this would be considered as like an early found footage kind of film. This is pre-Blair Witch. This came out around the same time as Last Broadcast. I have to say Cannibal Holocaust, even though that's more so half and half found footage and traditional narrative filmmaking. But if I don't, some people will be like, oh, you forgot Cannibal Holocaust, just making sure you know that I know that. But I do know that on the cover, and it's Benoit Poelvoorde, who plays the killer, Benoit or Ben. He kind of looks like Charles Starkweather here on the cover, but and I really like his character and his performance in this because when he's not killing, when he's just a regular guy in front of the camera, there are times where he kind of looks like Larry Fine of the Three Stooges. He's very affable, likable. You know, he jokes around a lot. He seems very polite and somewhat well educated and kind of always looking to have a good time, looking out for the interest of the crew members. As time goes on, we do sort of see his dark side kind of peeking out towards the crew members. I mean, we see him killing from the very first scene. It's not like the killer emerges. It's what the whole documentary is about. But I mean, he does have friends and acquaintances that we meet throughout the film, like his family, this close childhood girlfriend type character, like a Rachel Dawes from Dark Knight kind of character, his boxing coach or mentor, and it really is just like a documentary. And I will say the black and white and the performance along with the dialogue, because really what these three guys were looking for, which I want to see which one is the actual director. I think it's Remy. I really need a new tablet. This thing is Remy is the one that shows up on screen the most. So it was directed by all three. It was produced by all three. And the three of them wrote the screenplay with Vincent Tavier, who shows up later on in the film. So really, the only people that weren't behind the scenes in any way were like the family, the friends, and the victims. kind of like a Monty Python production, I guess. But I lost where I was going with that. Oh, but as the film goes on, a couple of the crew members are killed, then they get replaced. But it's back in 1992. And, so you have the guy with film, you have the boom operator, you have, the guy that's kind of doing the interviewing, I guess, but then, like, when someone dies, more of the crew members got to take multiple jobs. Like, the producer has to start holding the boom. And there are some very interesting choices. Oh, now I remember what I was going to say. Just the way it's written, like dialogue-wise, the performances and the black and white, but also just like the low-budget nature of the film, I really related to like Clerks. And I'm guessing the black and white was for it to be cheap, because the whole idea between this was they were all film students. They wanted to make a movie with no money about guys trying to make a movie with no money. That's really what the documentary is. They run out of money and film, so the killer, Ben, decides to kill and steal the money to help fund this film, help buy more film. So they kind of put their real life into this. And it does have this very authentic Clerks feel to it. And if you follow my channel for a long time, Clerks is one of my all-time favorite films. And I really love the just low-budget, black and white, how well it's written, the dry, very clever, witty comedy. Oh, even that feels like a documentary. Clerks does, but just that with how it's shot. This is meant to actually feel like a documentary. And also when a crew member dies, that's really not meant to be like a comedy part, like Spinal Tap, like, oh, we've lost another guy, we got to get another one. There are moments of horror or drama. You know, whenever someone dies, we see Remy back at where they're staying, talking to the camera about how, like, this one guy, Patrick, the first sound guy, was killed, and he was like, you know, this was your movie, or maybe Patrick was the second guy, but either way, he's like, we're gonna finish this for you, and, you know, he's holding back tears because he lost a friend. I thought those scenes were well done, but there were some technical choices that really helped the authenticity, and I thought were very interesting. There's a part where they're walking around sort of this rundown plant or industrial area, and there's some other guy in there shooting at them. Well, actually, first, Ben loses his ID bracelet that he says he stole from someone who had the same name as him. He lost it, so he has the other guys looking for it. But the camera guy is up here with Ben, and all the other guys are like levels below trying to find his ID bracelet. And one of them is the boom guy. So even though Ben is right in front of us talking, we can't hear him. But the boom guy is way over here saying, like, you know, I don't see it over here. And we hear him very clearly. And then, you know, there's like another part where they killed the guy who was shooting at them. And Ben's talking to the camera. There's not even subtitles because it can't pick up anything he's saying. And as the guy with the boom comes closer, it kind of starts to, and it gets louder and louder until he's right. I thought that was a smart choice, even if it was something they didn't really have to do. If they could just literally just do what they were doing, not have to manipulate the sound. I thought that was a great choice. That helped with the authenticity. There's also an elderly sex worker that he's friends with that, you know, they visit, and then she visits him on his birthday. And slowly but surely, the crew guys, especially this guy Vincent that comes in after the death of a couple of them, where they really start to participate in some of his activities, more so than just helping dispose of the bodies. I mean, it's around Christmas time, and they go to this married couple's house where the guy is stripped naked and held at gunpoint. They all take turns raping his wife. And they're all laughing, and it's all, you know, they're all having glee. They break into this one family's house to steal money because one person suggests, why don't we go to a suburban area? So Ben's like, I'll take you whenever. So they go to a suburban area. they kill the parents, and then the kid, young kid, like 8 or 9 or younger, runs away, and they all gotta try to catch him. Ben catches him, and he's suffocating the kid, and he tells Remy to like hold his legs and hold his arms. So they're all kind of participating in the worst ways. So yeah, and that's the death of a child, not like a baby. But there is, during that scene where Remy does ask him, do you kill children normally? And that's when he says, no, this is probably my second or third kid in 5 years. There's no real worth to him unless you kidnap him, and that's just more of a nuisance than anything, so I don't really like to do that. And, he gives lessons on you shouldn't go after young couples because they don't really have much money. I've never heard of a rich pauper or like an old pauper. Stingy, but not a pauper. So old people are really, always have money. And he really takes, wow, I've been doing that a lot. He really takes glee in a lot of what he does. Like, he has a thing for some of the finer things as well, like music and art and paintings, and especially architecture. But earlier on, they go to this one very elderly woman's apartment, and they act like they're doing a documentary on loneliness and like low-income housing. So they're all sitting in the living room like they're going to interview her, and he goes to take his gun out, and she's just kind of talking, and he acts like he's going to shoot her, but then he gets right up in her ear and yells at her like, have you ever been snuffed out, lady? And she just kind of falls and trembles, and he's like, well, that'll save me a bullet. And he picks up this box, and he's like, oh, I noticed she has a box of whatever it was. He's like, you may not know, but this is for people with heart problems. So I just kind of freaked her out. Yeah, she's fading out pretty hard right now, and she like reaches her arm up, and he stops her, and he's like, saves me a bullet. And he laughs. And then they start raiding her apartment. They find a bunch of money. He wants to take them all out to get beer and mussels. They all say, let's not go tonight. And you can tell he's kind of feels hurt and rejected. And then as the film goes on, he starts acting more hostile towards the crew. Like Remy, he talks about how ugly he is when he laughs, how bad his breath is, how even though they're filming and they're doing this for him, they're sort of getting in the way and not being very helpful to him. And so from here on out, it's going to be spoilers for like the third act or later. And like I said, this is a film that is good to go into as blind as possible. And I do recommend it. Even though I have said extreme or shocking, disturbing, it's not an August Underground, or even to stay within the criterion, it's not a Sallow. It's more, it's one of those movies where the extreme content has the class, the humor, and the artistic merit to back it up. It's not doing it for shock value. It's trying to be this effective movie about, this documentary about a serial killer, but it's not trying to just go for the furthest reaches of what people can handle. It's kind of like what August Underground would be like if you had clever filmmakers behind it. And it wasn't all just about the kills and the effects and the shock. It is more like Behind the Mask. Only it's not afraid to show you sort of the horrors of what serial killers do. And yeah, the guy is kind of a racist. There is a part where they kill a black guy, and he's like, let's check out the legend about, what's in their pants. I mean, we don't see anything, but he kind of makes a deal of it. But I'm going to say spoilers for what leads to the ending, which is kind of different for this kind of film. But I do recommend this film. Just don't think you're going to get this really... Because I can already tell there's going to be comments of, like, you call this disturbing? I highly recommend you check out, because no one else has seen this but me, other movies that you've reviewed already. I'm just making it sound like only I've seen them. No. I mean, it can qualify as like an extreme film, but it's done in such a way that there's more to it than just the shock value. So, spoilers. This movie does have the downfall of the killer and the crew. I mean, it's not like Behind the Mask where, spoilers on that as well, they turn on the killer and try to save the victims. But, and where I thought it was going was similar to Behind the Mask. I thought he was going to start turning on the crew, like he was going to start killing them off or finding them useless or pathetic, or maybe they're going to start having too much remorse, or they were going to turn on him and try to get him busted. But it doesn't really go that way. There's a quarry where they dump all their bodies, and at one point the quarry is dry, which I kind of took it as someone drained it, which can happen. Like law enforcement, if they suspect something going on, they can drain bodies of water, or it just dried up. Either way. Oh, but also before that, his girlfriend figure, who is a musician, got this taxidermy. It wasn't taxidermy. This animal that was skewered, had a stick, Cannibal Holocaust style, and it was sent to her, which is kind of a warning, like a threat, like a mafia style. Oh, and there's a guy on here that likes to break hairs about what mafia is. Whatever gang it is that's in this movie. Whatever ethnicity appropriate gang title they have, set this as a warning, because at one point they're walking around this derelict house, like this apartment house or whatever, and there's this other film crew which they kill, and he even has his crew members, he gives them a gun and they shoot some of the people. Apparently within that crew, there's an Italian guy whose brother is part of the mob, and they know that the killer and these guys were the ones that killed them, or it was part of some other victim. It was an Italian guy's brother, so they're sending threats to Ben, and then they see that the quarry's been dried up, so he has the guys, he stays way up there, but he has the crew dig holes, bury the bodies. I mean, we see what's left over of bodies. We see skulls and skeletons. He's starting to be harsher and meaner. He goes into a boxing match. He gets hit too hard, and he has to wear a neck brace. There's a scene that reminds me of The Untouchables, where it's his birthday dinner, and he's got his neck brace. I mean, there's the crew, his girlfriend, his boxing trainer, I guess, and the sex worker. It seems like the girl and the trainer are getting like a little close. So the crew gets him a pistol holster for his birthday. He tries that out and he just shoots the trainer. And that's actually when they go to dispose his body that they see that everything's dried up. And I guess he's been on trial or something for some time, because he ends up being on trial for the murders. Oh, it's the mail guy. So he has the neck brace. At the beginning of every month, he goes after a postal worker. Grabs a hold of this one postal worker. But he's so stiff and can't really move that the guy hits him in the nuts and is able to flee. That's when Ben is arrested, placed in jail. He escapes somehow. The crew picks him up. They go to his girlfriend's house. She's been killed. She has a flute. Her flute is stuck in her in a certain place. He weeps and cries for her, and then decides to go to his mom's house, where they've met the same fate, except she has a broom stuck in her. And then he weeps, saying that, you know, she's not a musician. Why did she get hers? And this is when he decides to flee, you know, go to some other country. So they go back to the house where the other film crew was that they killed. Bodies are still there. And Ben and Remy are reciting some poem, and then all of a sudden there's a bang, and Ben is shot in the head. It goes into like this slow motion, and then Remy is shot. The camera drops. The sound guy tries to run away. He gets shot, and then we just have the camera on the ground for a few moments before it just fizzles out. And we don't know who it is that shot him. I'm guessing it's safe to say it's probably the Italian. It could either be the Italian guy that's been sending the threats and killing his loved ones. Could be law enforcement. But it's different because normally in films like this, like the found footage serial killer, he's still at large. You know, even in the Poughkeepsie tapes, the killer was never identified or caught, so that's kind of like a news special on him. It ends with the killer still being at large, still being caught, or like August Underground, you know, he's still out there. Or he would like turn on the camera crew or something, you know, even something like Creep. But here, the killer is dead. The killer's killed, so is the crew. We see the killer get his just desserts. We see the crew that's been, you know, not only involved, but willingly participating in his deeds. All throughout the film, they're all killed. So in a way, justice is kind of served, and it's very different to have in a film like this. But, you know, it's very effective. You get a lot of scenes where it's like a montage of him killing people. Like just a bunch of bangs and someone falling, dying with blood. There was one that I thought was kind of unique. It's this elder woman being strangled, and you know her mouth is open, and we see her top dentures just kind of slowly get pushed out and come out. Which maybe that's what the dentures was on the alternate cover. But I thought that was interesting. I'm sure a lot of people say he uses a gun that's not even that violent. It works for the context of the film, and also it helps like with that montage. It's not like a super gory film. There is blood. I would say the goriest scene would be the Christmas married couple, where the husband is there and they're all taking turns raping his wife. We see the aftermath of her pretty much being eviscerated. I think there's like a Christmas wreath or something put on top of her. But this movie is just as equally, you know, shocking or, you know, kind of visceral or disturbing in its own way as it is clever. You know, it's clever. It's very darkly humorous. It's got a lot of dark humor, like with how educational a lot of the how to kill, why to kill, how to dispose, sort of educational documentary value that this kind of has. It is kind of humorous. The performances are very authentic. It does feel like a very authentic documentary, but also just some of the technical choices, like I said earlier, with the guy with the boomstick that's far away, but we can hear him and not who's in front of the camera. And depending on, in relation to where they are with each other, that's how the sound is. I thought that was kind of ingenious and, a very smart choice. It was a movie that I was very engrossed in. I had my ideas of where it was going to go. It didn't go that way at all, and that's what was surprising about it. And, the killer was a very interesting person because he's very affable, likable, charming. Normally kind of looks like Larry Fine in some scenes. But then when he goes into killer mode, you see how vicious he is and how he can use his charm and charisma to his advantage. And yeah, I really enjoyed this film. And if you stuck through the spoilers and still haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. And don't be one of those people that disregards the film because it's black and white, because it's foreign and has subtitles, because it's found footage or documentary. A lot of movies like that have great value to them and are very entertaining. This is a great example. Man Bites Dog. I heard about it years ago. Always wanted to see it. Finally picked it up. Couldn't wait to see it. Well worth the wait. A movie doesn't have to be August Underground or Sallow or a Serbian film to be shocking. It can have less blood and gore or even violence, like harsh, visceral violence. But depending on how it's shot, how it's edited, how it's presented, it can pack just as much, if not more, of a punch and be just as, if not more, effective. This is an effective extreme film. I really liked Man Bites Dog. So with that, that's another one for the Criterion Collection. And thank you for watching.